Hi, welcome back to the channel. Let's get started.
The neon lights of Seoul reflect off the puddles like shattered glass, but I only care about the shadows. Most people see a woman walking home and think easy target. They don't see the tactical weight of the umbrella in my hand, or the way I've already mapped every exit in this alley. The rain in Gangnam doesn't wash anything away. It just makes the filth slide more easily into the gutters. I keep my pace steady, the rhythm of my boots a deliberate heavy counterpoint to the erratic drumming of the storm. I'm a ghost in this city, a disgraced security consultant whose only sin was being too good at a job someone else wanted to fail. Now, I exist in the margins, navigating the neon-soaked labyrinth with the hyper-vigilance of a hunted animal. I turn the corner into a narrow stretch, the scent of wet asphalt and sour refuse hitting me instantly. That's when I hear it. Not the rain, but the sound of leather hitting flesh, and a low guttural laugh that makes my skin crawl. 3 of them. Street-level muscle, the kind who wear cheap tracksuits and carry even cheaper knives. They've cornered a man against a stack of rusted crates. He's slumped over, a tattered gray coat hanging off his frame like a shroud. A white cane lies snapped in 2 near his feet, and dark sunglasses hide his eyes, though his face is turned downward in a posture of utter defeat. Check his pockets again. The lead thug barks, his voice raspy from too many cigarettes. A beggar in this district has to be hiding something. Nobody sits in the rain for nothing. He kicks the man's ribs. The beggar doesn't cry out. He just shifts. A small pained sound caught in his throat. I don't think. I don't hesitate. I am a creature of muscle memory and tactical calculation. I step into the light of a flickering overhead sign, my grip tightening on the handle of my weighted umbrella. 3 against 1? I ask, my voice cutting through the rain like a blade. And he's blind. That's a new low, even for this alley. The leader turns, a sneer twisting his face. Keep walking, honey. This doesn't concern. He doesn't finish the sentence. I've already closed the distance. As he reaches for his waistband, I flick the release on my umbrella. It doesn't open. Instead, I use the reinforced tip to strike the nerve cluster in his forearm. The bone doesn't just snap, it shatters. Welcome back, my fierce hearts and midnight dreamers. Before we dive into the wreckage of this alley, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that like button and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our little dark romance family stretch across cities, countries, and time zones. Every click, every comment, and every bit of love you leave here helps us keep unraveling these dangerous love stories and high-stakes betrayals together. So find your quiet place, dim the lights, and get ready. Let's see what happens when a predator picks the wrong prey. Let's begin. The leader screams, clutching his dangling arm, but I've already pivoted. The second thug lunges with a switchblade. I don't give him the satisfaction of a struggle. I sweep the weighted canopy of my umbrella across his knees. The sound is a sickening crunch, the kind that means he'll never walk without a limp again. He hits the ground, howling as he slides through a oily puddle. The third one is smarter. He hesitates, eyes darting between his broken companions and the statuesque woman who just dismantled them in 5 seconds. He pulls a brass knuckle from his pocket, his knuckles white. Get out of here, I tell him, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, while you still have a jaw to eat with. He roars, swinging a wild, uncoordinated hook. I duck. The movement is fluid as oil on water. I drive the handle of the umbrella into his solar plexus, knocking the wind from his lungs, then follow up with a precise strike to the temple with the heavy ferrule. He drops like a sack of stones, unconscious before he hits the pavement. Silence returns to the alley, save for the heavy breathing of the 2 men groaning on the ground, and the relentless patter of the rain. I don't look at them. My eyes are fixed on the man in the tattered coat. I collapse my umbrella and slide it into the holster on my back. I approach him slowly, keeping my center of gravity low. Even as a beggar, there is something off about him. He isn't trembling. He isn't scrambling away in fear. He's just sitting there, his head tilted slightly as if he's listening to the heartbeat of the city itself. "Are you all right?" I ask, kneeling in the wet grime. The scent hits me then. It isn't the smell of a man who lives on the streets. Beneath the calculated layers of grime and cheap alcohol, there is a faint, sharp note of something expensive. Sandalwood? Cedar? It's the smell of power, tucked away behind a mask of poverty. I reach out, my fingers hovering near his shoulder to check for internal injuries. My training screams at me to be careful, but my instinct, something deeper and more primal, pulls me toward him. The moment my hand brushes his coat, the air between us seems to charge with static. It's a magnetic pull so fierce, it steals the breath from my lungs. He doesn't pull away. Instead, he slowly lifts his head. His dark glasses are slightly crooked from the scuffle, revealing a glimpse of eyes that don't look sightless at all. They look like twin abysses, dark and calculating, stripping away my defenses until I feel completely exposed. There is no weakness in his posture now. The way he sits, the way he breathes, it's the stillness of a predator who has been watching the entire show with bored amusement. He reaches up, his large, calloused hand wrapping around my wrist. His grip is iron, possessive, and warm despite the freezing rain, a shiver that has nothing to do with the cold races down my spine. He leans in, his face inches from mine. When he speaks, his voice isn't the raspy whine of a beggar. It's a rich, velvet baritone that vibrates deep in my chest, commanding and terrifyingly intimate. "You have the hands of a healer, but the eyes of a reaper," he murmurs, a slow, dangerous smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I think I'll keep you, Queen Omari." The three bodies are still twitching in the oily sludge of the alley when the world shifts. I expect sirens. I expect the harsh glare of flashlights and the shouted commands of the Seoul Metropolitan Police. Instead, the shadows at the mouth of the alley seem to detach themselves from the brickwork. 6 men in tailored black suits materialize like smoke, their movements silent and synchronized. They don't spare a glance at the wreckage I've left behind. They don't check the pulses of the men I've broken. They simply stop 10 paces away and bow, deep, rhythmic, and terrified, toward the man in the tattered gray coat. At the end of the narrow passage, a police cruiser pulls up, its blue and red lights painting the rain-slicked walls in violent hues. My hand goes to the umbrella, my muscles coiled for a secondary engagement. But then, the unthinkable happens. The officer behind the wheel looks directly at us, looks at the carnage, and then looks at the man sitting in the grime. Without a word, he flicks the lights off. The cruiser reverses and disappears into the neon fog of Gangnam. A silent nod to a power so absolute it doesn't just break the law, it owns it. "The car is ready, Chairman," one of the suits murmurs. The beggar stands. The transition is jarring. The slumped shoulders vanish, replaced by a spine of tempered steel. He doesn't let go of my wrist. His grip is a warm manacle, pulling me toward the street where an obsidian black Maybach sits idling. The door is held open for us, and before I can calculate a path of escape, I am ushered into the pressurized silence of the back seat. The door closes with a heavy, expensive thud, sealing out the world. The sensory shift is enough to give me vertigo. Inside the car, the air is filtered and cool, smelling of hand-stitched leather and a cologne that smells like cold rain and expensive tobacco, Xiangjun's scent. It clashes violently with my own, the metallic tang of copper from the blood on my knuckles, the ozone of the storm, and the faint, wet dog smell of my soaked trench coat. I am a feral creature trapped in a velvet cage. I stare at my reflection in the tinted glass as we glide through the city. My dark skin is slicked with rain, my eyes hard and hollow. I look like a ghost because, for the last year, that's exactly what I've been. I see the phantom of the woman I used to be, the elite security consultant for the Blue House. A woman who moved through the highest echelons of government power until the floor fell out from under her. I remember the night it happened. The breach. The high-level data that vanished on my watch. The digital fingerprints they planted that pointed directly to my terminal. I was framed by someone who knew exactly how to dismantle a life. I didn't cry then, and I don't cry now. I have no one to call. No parents to mourn my fall. No siblings in university to protect. No Marcus waiting at home to offer a shoulder. I am a singular point in the universe. I am alone, and in this world, that is the only true form of freedom. If you have nothing to lose, you have nothing they can use against you. Or so I thought. The man beside me shifts. The silence in the car is heavy, charged with a magnetic tension that makes the hair on my arms stand up. Seong-jun hasn't moved his glasses, but his posture is now terrifyingly regal. He's no longer the victim, he is the Void King, the center of gravity in this rolling fortress. He reaches into a side compartment and pulls out a sleek, customized tablet. He doesn't look at it. He doesn't need to. He slides it across the leather seat toward me. I pick it up. The screen glows, illuminating the scars on my hands. It's a file. My file. But it's not the public record of my disgrace. It's the redacted truth. It lists my ghost codename from my days in the special sectors. It details the exact caliber of the umbrella I carry. And at the very bottom, it shows my current bank balance, 0.00 Korean won. You've been living in the crawl spaces of my city for 342 days. Queen Omari, he says. His voice is different now. No longer the baritone of the alley, but a cold, articulate rasp that feels like a physical weight on my chest. You've done an admirable job of staying invisible. But you forgot one thing. I am the darkness you've been hiding in. I turn to him, my pulse hammering against my ribs. Who are you? A man who appreciates utility, he says. He still hasn't looked at me, but I feel his focus. It's like a laser. The men you dismantled tonight were the vanguard for the Jang Syndicate. You didn't just win a street fight. You declared war on a family that prides itself on its memory. By tomorrow morning, your face will be burned into the retinas of every hitman from here to Busan. He finally turns his head toward me. The dark glasses stay on, but the power behind them is suffocating. He leans in closer, invading my space, his scent wrapping around me like a shroud. You think you saved a beggar, he whispers, his lips inches from my ear, but all you've done is forfeit your anonymity. You aren't being rescued, Queen. You are being acquired. You belong to the Yun Syndicate now, because the only thing more dangerous than the men hunting you is the man who just bought your life. He taps a command into the tablet, and my bank balance flickers. The zeros vanish, replaced by a number so large it makes my head swim. I don't want your money, I hiss, though my hand trembles slightly. It's not a gift, Seong-jun replies, leaning back into the shadows of the Maybach. It's a down payment. You're going to fix the holes in my empire, or you're going to die in the gutter where I found you. Choose quickly, Queen. We're almost home. I look out the window as the car turns into a massive, gated compound that looks more like a fortress than a residence. The gates swing open like the jaws of a beast, and I realize with a chilling clarity that the ride to hell has only just begun. The Maybach glides into the bowels of a structure that feels less like a penthouse and more like a tomb for the living. We ascend in a private elevator. The silence so thick I can hear the pressurized hiss of the hydraulics. When the doors slide open, I'm not greeted by the warmth of a home. I am greeted by the void. Seong-jun's fortress is a brutalist masterpiece of glass, obsidian and exposed steel. It sits atop the city like a predatory bird, but inside the lights are kept at a permanent, bruised twilight. There are no chandeliers, no welcoming glow, just the rhythmic pulse of server lights and the faint blue luminescence of recessed floor strips. It's a space designed for a man who doesn't need to see to dominate. I step out, my boots clicking against the polished stone. Immediately, my internal HUD, the one I spent a decade calibrating at the Blue House, starts pinging. My eyes dart to the corners of the ceiling, the joints of the walls, the glass partitions. Stop, I say, my voice echoing in the vast foyer. Seong-jun pauses, his back to me. His head of security, a man named Kang with a face like a granite block and a suit that fits a little too tightly over his holster, wheels around. He glares at me with a pure, unadulterated venom. To him, I'm just a stray the boss picked up in the rain. Move, woman, Kang growls. The chairman doesn't have time for. You have a 3-degree blind spot on your thermal sensor in the northeast quadrant, I interrupt, my voice cold and clinical. I point toward the ceiling joint. Any operative with a thermal dampening suit can walk right through that door without triggering an alarm. Your elevator's biometric scan has a 0.4-second lag, long enough for a ghost loop to bypass the identity check. And that floor-to-ceiling glass? It's reinforced, sure, but the structural anchors are exposed at the base. One targeted ultrasonic pulse and this entire fortress becomes a wind tunnel. The silence that follows is deafening. Kang's face turns a mottled shade of purple. He opens his mouth to bark a denial, but Seong-jun raises a single elegant hand. The gesture is small, but the authority behind it is absolute. Kang snaps his jaw shut, his eyes burning with a promise of future violence. Seong-jun turns slightly. Even in the dim light, the silhouette of his broad shoulders is imposing. Fix them, he says simply. He leads me deeper into the penthouse, into an office that feels like the bridge of a ghost ship. There is no desk, no clutter of paper, just a massive floor-to-ceiling window that looks out over the rain-blurred neon of Seoul. The city looks small from here. Vulnerable. He turns to face me, his hands clasped behind his back. I've watched 3 security firms attempt to find those flaws, Queen. They failed. You found them in 30 seconds while soaking wet and being acquired. It confirms my investment. I'm not an investment, I snap, my grip tightening on the handle of my umbrella. And I don't work for criminals. You worked for the Blue House, he counters, his voice a low, dangerous purr. The only difference between a politician and a man like me is the quality of the suit and the honesty of the violence. He walks toward a holographic display that flickers to life in the center of the room. It's my file again, the one that branded me a traitor. I know who framed you, he says. The words hit me like a physical blow. I have the decrypted logs, the offshore account names, and the original data packet. I can delete every trace of your crime tonight. I can make it so Queen Omari never existed, or I can make it so she returns to the world with a record as white as fresh snow. I can give you your life back. I feel the breath hitch in my throat. Redemption. It's the one thing I thought was gone forever. No family to clear my name for, just the pride of the woman I see in the mirror. And the price? I ask, my voice barely a whisper. Simple, he says, stepping closer. You become my shadow. You rebuild my empire's security from the bedrock up. Every sensor, every guard, every digital pulse goes through you. You live here, in this penthouse, under my watch 24 hours a day. You belong to the void. I let out a harsh, jagged laugh. You don't want a consultant, Seong-jun. You want a bird in a cage. My nickname isn't Ghost just because I'm hard to find. It's because everyone I get close to ends up dead or ruined. I'm bad luck. I'm a black widow without the web. You should let me go back to that alley. He doesn't flinch. Instead, he closes the final bit of distance between us. He is so close I can feel the heat radiating from his chest. The scent of sandalwood and danger thick in the air. He reaches up and slowly, deliberately, removes his dark glasses. I expect scarred tissue or clouded pupils. I don't find them. Instead, I am staring into eyes that are sharp, piercing, and a terrifying shade of obsidian. They aren't the eyes of a blind man. They are the eyes of a man who has mastered the art of seeing through the dark. They are filled with an intensity that borders on obsession. I am the void, queen, he murmurs, his breath warm against my cheek. He reaches out, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw with a possessive touch that makes my blood turn to fire. You can't bring darkness to a man who owns the night. You aren't bad luck to me. You're the missing piece of my machine. He leans in, his voice dropping to a vibration that I feel in my very marrow. Sign the digital contract on that tablet, or walk out that door. But know this, if you leave, the Jangs will find you before you reach the street, and I won't be there to catch you a second time. What will it be, Queen? Survival? Or the gutter? I look at his eyes, then at the city below, then back to the man who is currently holding my soul in his hands. I've spent my whole life being the one who watches. Now, I'm being watched. And the terrifying part? I don't want to look away. I reach for the tablet. The silk against my skin feels like a betrayal. I've spent the last year in rough canvas and nylon, clothes designed to blend into the shadows and take the friction of a concrete floor. Now, I stand in front of a floor-to-ceiling mirror in a suite larger than my last 3 apartments combined. Seong-joon didn't just burn my alley rags, he replaced them with a wardrobe that is both an insult and a masterpiece. Sleek blazers with reinforced shoulders, charcoal gray silk shirts that move like water, and trousers tailored so perfectly they feel like a second skin. I reach for a long, structured trench coat and slide my hand into the interior lining. My breath hitches. There, hidden in the seam, is a specialized magnetic sheath designed perfectly for the dimensions of my tactical umbrella. He isn't dressing me to be a trophy. He isn't trying to turn a soldier into a doll. He's dressing me as his general, arming me in high-fashion camouflage so I can walk beside him in the light without losing my edge. The first meal in the Void Fortress is a lesson in psychological warfare. We sit at an immense slab of black marble that serves as a dining table. The food is exquisite, a parade of delicate Korean dishes that I'm sure cost more than a month's worth of my previous security gigs, but the atmosphere is starving for air. I eat like a soldier. My movements are efficient, my eyes never leaving the perimeter of the room, my fork a tool rather than an instrument of pleasure. Across from me, Seong-joon is a study in predatory stillness. He doesn't eat much. Instead, he watches me. He has replaced his dark glasses with a pair of light-filtering lenses that still hide the direction of his gaze, but I can feel the weight of it. It's a physical heat that makes my skin burn beneath the silk. It's the look of a man who isn't just observing a guest, but a man who is cataloging every breath I take. The silk suits you, Queen, he says, his voice a low vibration that seems to travel through the marble table and into my bones. It's quiet. Like you. I prefer the sound of Kevlar, I reply, setting my chopsticks down with a sharp clack. In this house, silence is the only armor that matters. By 3 a.m., the silence he prizes so much is the very thing keeping me awake. The bed in my suite is too soft, a cloud that feels like it's trying to swallow me whole. My brain is still wired for the street, for the sound of a footstep on a fire escape, or the click of a safety being disengaged. I get up, sliding into one of the new silk robes, and begin a silent sweep of the penthouse. It's a ghost habit I can't break. I map the hallways, testing the pressure-sensitive floor tiles and checking the refresh rates of the hidden cameras. I move like a shadow, my bare feet making no sound on the cold marble. I reach the east wing, a section of the house that felt cordoned off during the tour. A faint, golden light spills from beneath a heavy oak door. I shouldn't enter. My contract says I am here for security, not to pry. But my instincts tell me that a hidden light in a house of darkness is a vulnerability. I push the door open an inch. It's a sunroom filled with plush rugs and shelves of silent toys. In the center of the room, sitting on a pile of cushions, is a small girl. She looks like a miniature, softer version of Seong-joon. This is Suri. I'd seen her name in the encrypted files, his younger sister, the only survivor of the hit that took their parents. The files said she was a total mute. Trauma-induced. She doesn't see me at first. She's staring at a complicated wooden puzzle, her small fingers trembling as she tries to force a piece into place. She looks frustrated, her lower lip wobbling, but not a single sound escapes her. I should walk away. I should go back to my cold silk bed. But I see the way she's holding that puzzle piece. The same way I used to hold my first tactical manual, desperate for a world that made sense. I step into the room. She freezes, her eyes widening. I don't speak. Words are just noise to a heart that's been shattered by them. Instead, I sit on the floor 6 feet away from her. I reach into the pocket of my robe and pull out a deck of high-gloss playing cards I'd swiped from the lounge. Using my ghost sleight of hand, skills I usually use to plant trackers or lift key cards, I begin a silent performance. I make the ace of spades vanish and reappear behind her ear. I weave the cards through my fingers in a complex rhythmic waterfall that creates a hypnotic clicking sound in the quiet room. Suri leans forward, her eyes locked on my hands. I do a rapid-fire shadow play against the wall with my other hand, making the silhouette of a bird that seems to fly across the cards. Then, I intentionally fumble a card, letting it bounce off my nose. The sound is tiny. It's rusty, like a gate that hasn't been opened in a decade. But it's there. A giggle. A genuine, high-pitched ripple of amusement that cuts through the stagnant air of the fortress. I look at her and offer a small, real smile. She reaches out, touching the card on the floor, and for the first time, the void feels a little less empty. 3 floors away, in a room bathed only in the flickering blue light of 100 monitors, Seong-joon stands perfectly still. He is watching the high-definition feed of the sunroom. He sees the woman he hired as a cold-blooded reaper sitting on a rug, performing card tricks for a broken child. The audio sensors pick up the giggle, amplifying it until it fills the surveillance room. Seong-joon's hand trembles as he reaches out to touch the screen, his fingers tracing the outline of Queen's face. He didn't just hire a security consultant to fix his walls. He realizes, with a surge of something that feels dangerously like hope, that he has brought a heart into a house of stone. And he has no intention of ever letting it leave. The thunder doesn't just rumble, it strikes. Each clap sounds like a localized explosion against the glass walls of the penthouse, a violent percussion that echoes the night my life ended at the Blue House. The typhoon has turned Seoul into a drowning city, the wind howling through the brutalist architecture of the fortress like a wounded beast. I'm not a woman who cowers. I don't hide under covers. But tonight, my ghost composure is fraying at the edges. I'm pacing the length of my suite, the silk of my robe clinging to my skin, slicked by a cold sweat that has nothing to do with the temperature. My hand is locked around the handle of my tactical umbrella, my knuckles white. Every flash of lightning that illuminates the room feels like a breach. Every roar of thunder is a flashbang going off in my memory. I need space. I need to see the threat. I move toward the main terrace, my feet silent on the marble. The penthouse is a cavern of shadows, the only light coming from the jagged veins of electricity splitting the sky outside. I stop at the edge of the kitchen, the floor-to-ceiling glass vibrating with the force of the storm. He's already there. Seong-joon is a silhouette against the chaos of the sky. He's standing by the window, a glass of amber whiskey in his hand. He isn't wearing his suit jacket or his glasses. Just a black silk shirt, unbuttoned at the throat, and the weight of the night on his shoulders. He doesn't turn when I approach, but I know he hears me. He hears the slight hitch in my breathing, the way the silk of my sleepwear rustles against my legs. The glass is rated for Category 5 winds. Queen, he says, his voice a low, steady anchor in the storm. It won't break. It's not the glass I'm worried about, I mutter, stepping closer to the window. I want to face the storm, to prove to my racing heart that the artillery is just rain. A massive bolt of lightning shatters the darkness, turning the room into a blinding white void for a fraction of a second. In that strobe light moment, I'm exposed. I've dropped my guard. My robe has slipped slightly off my shoulder, and as the light flares, it illuminates the map of my history written in scar tissue. Seong-jun turns. His obsidian eyes aren't looking at my face. They are locked on the jagged silver line of the bullet graze on my shoulder and the puckered remains of a blade strike that runs across my ribs, disappearing beneath the silk. These are the marks of a woman who stood in the gap and paid the toll. He sets his glass on the counter. The sound of the crystal hitting the stone is the only thing sharper than the thunder. He approaches me with a slow, deliberate grace, his presence effectively pushing back the ghosts of my past. "Who did this?" he asks. There is no pity in his voice, only a cold, simmering rage that feels strangely like a caress. "A man who called me his finest asset," I say, my voice steadying as I look at him. "The same man who sold my access codes and signed the warrant for my arrest. I took a bullet for him at 2 a.m., and by 6 a.m. he had erased my existence." Seong-jun doesn't offer hollow words of comfort. Instead, he reaches out. His hand is large, warm, and steady. For the first time, it's skin to skin. His thumb brushes the edge of the bullet scar on my shoulder. The contact sends a jolt through me that is more powerful than any lightning strike outside. It's an electric, magnetic pull that makes the air in my lungs vanish. "A king who betrays his shield deserves to lose his crown," he murmurs. He steps into my personal space, his heat radiating through my thin robe. Then, he does something I didn't expect. He reaches for the buttons of his own shirt, his eyes never leaving mine. He pulls the fabric back, revealing the expanse of his broad, muscled chest. There, centered over his heart, is a jagged, brutal mark, a brand of charred skin and ink that forms the seal of the Yun Syndicate, layered over the deep, rippled scars of a fire. "The fire that took my family didn't just burn my skin," he says, his voice dropping to a rasp that vibrates in my chest. "It branded me with a purpose. We are both creatures born of wreckage, Queen. We are both forged in the heat of a betrayal." The storm outside seems to fade into the background. There is only the scent of rain, the sharp tang of his whiskey, and the suffocating tension between us. He reaches out again, his hand sliding from my shoulder to the nape of my neck, his fingers tangling in my hair. He pulls me toward him, his strength effortless, until my chest is flush against his. I can feel his heartbeat, steady, powerful, and demanding. I should pull away. I should remember the contract, the professional distance, the fact that he is a man who deals in blood. But in the dark, with the world screaming outside, he is the only thing that feels real. He leans down, his lips brushing against mine, a ghost of a kiss, a promise of a fire that would consume us both. I tilt my head back, my eyes fluttering shut, waiting for the impact. But at the last possible second, he stops. His forehead rests against mine, his breathing ragged. The boss returns to his eyes, a wall of cold iron slamming back into place. "Go back to bed, Queen," he whispers, his voice thick with a hunger he's barely containing. "Before I forget that I'm the monster you're supposed to be protecting." He releases me and steps back into the shadows, picking up his whiskey as if the last 3 minutes never happened. I stand there in the dark, my skin still humming from his touch, realizing that the storm outside is nothing compared to the one he's just started inside of me. The transformation is a weapon in itself. I stand before the mirror in the penthouse, barely recognizing the woman looking back. The gown is a masterpiece of midnight blue silk, so dark it's almost black, clinging to my curves like a second skin. It's backless, the fabric plunging to the base of my spine, leaving the silver map of my scars, the bullet graze, the blade marks, completely exposed to the world. Seong-jun had insisted on this. He didn't want me to hide the evidence of my survival. He wanted me to wear it like armor. I reached down, the silk whispering against my skin, and check the tactical knife strapped to my inner thigh with a matte black garter. My umbrella, redesigned for the evening, is now a sleek long evening accessory that looks like a high-end designer clutch, though its frame is still solid carbon fiber. I am a paradox, a premier socialite on the outside, a lethal security breach on the inside. When I step into the foyer, Seong-jun is waiting. He's in a charcoal tuxedo that fits his broad frame with predatory precision. He doesn't say a word. He simply looks at me, his eyes traveling from the scars on my shoulders to the fire in my eyes. He reaches out, his hand settling on the small of my back, a possessive heavy heat that grounds me. "Tonight, you aren't a ghost, Queen," he murmurs, his voice vibrating against my ear. "You are the storm." The Seoul Midnight Gala is held in a ballroom that smells of vintage champagne and old rotting secrets. As the doors swing open and we are announced, the cacophony of the elite drops into a vacuum of stunned silence. The paparazzi's flashes are like rhythmic lightning, catching the contrast of my dark skin against the midnight silk and the terrifyingly regal stature of the man beside me. I don't walk like a debutante. I walk with the measured, predatory gait of a woman who has already mapped the exits and identified the 3 men in the room carrying concealed firearms. I am not his pet, I am his general. "Smile, Queen," Seong-jun whispers, though his own expression is a mask of cold stone. "Let them wonder why you look like you're contemplating their autopsies." The crowd parts for us like the Red Sea, until we are intercepted near the champagne fountain. Director Park. The man is the embodiment of polished filth. As the head of the security firm that swallowed my old life and spat out a framed record, he's the architect of my disgrace. He looks at me with a snide, oily grin, his eyes raking over my exposed back. "Chairman Yun," Park says, his voice a nasal whine. "I see you've taken up charity work. I didn't realize you were into collecting expensive trash." This one was a particularly messy janitor at the Blue House before she was disposed of. The air around us turns to liquid nitrogen. I feel the muscles in Seong-jun's hand tighten against my spine. I don't flinch. I've been insulted by experts. Park is just a middle manager with a god complex. Park steps closer, emboldened by the audience. He reaches out a hand, his fingers aiming for the strap of my gown, his voice dropping to a condescending sneer. "Careful, Chairman. They call her the Black Widow for a reason. Everyone she touches ends up ruined. She's a disgrace." Before his fingers can graze my skin, Seong-jun moves. It's too fast for the human eye to follow. One moment his hand is on my back. The next, he has Park's wrist in a grip that sounds like dry wood beginning to splinter. Seong-jun doesn't yell. He doesn't have to. He leans in, his face inches from Park's, his obsidian eyes turning into shards of ice. The entire ballroom goes deathly quiet. "You're looking at a woman who knows exactly where your heart beats, Park," Seong-jun says, his voice a low, lethal rasp that carries to every corner of the room. "She didn't fail at the Blue House. She was betrayed by cowards who were afraid of her brilliance. If you ever speak her name again, or if your hand even thinks about moving in her direction, I won't call my lawyers." He leans in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that feels like a death sentence. "I'll let her show you exactly why they call her a Reaper, and I'll watch you bleed out while I toast to her health." Park's face drains of all color. He stammers, his knees visibly shaking, until Seong-jun releases him with a shove that sends the man stumbling back into a table of crystal flutes. The sound of shattering glass echoes like a gunshot. Seong-jun doesn't spare him a second glance. He turns to me, and for a split second, the king mask slips. There is a raw, terrifying protectiveness in his gaze, a realization that hits me harder than any physical blow. He isn't just protecting an asset. He is protecting me. The orchestra begins a slow, haunting waltz. Without a word, he leads me to the center of the floor. He pulls me into his space, his hand returning to my bare back. his other hand clasping mine. The tension between us is a living thing, a magnetic hum that drowns out the music and the whispers of the elite. We move in perfect lethal synchronization. The world around us is a blur of light and shadow, but his eyes are the only thing I see. You shouldn't have done that, I whisper, my breath hitching as he pulls me closer. Our bodies flush. You've made an enemy of him. He was an enemy the moment he laid eyes on you, Seong-jun replies, his thumb tracing the edge of the scar on my shoulder. Let the world watch, Queen. Let them see what happens when the void decides to keep something. As we spin in the dim light, the scent of his cologne and the heat of his body wrap around me, and I realize with a chilling thrill that I am no longer just his shadow. I am the woman the king would burn the world to keep. The smell of freshly ground coffee and the lingering scent of Seong-jun's sandalwood cologne fill the air. A rare, domestic peace that feels more dangerous than a gunfight. We are standing by the glass, the morning sun over Seoul struggling to pierce the gray haze. For the first time, he isn't a king, and I am not a ghost. We are just two survivors standing in the light. He hands me a small, encrypted drive. The final logs from the Blue House server, he says, his voice unusually soft. I had my team pull the raw data. By noon, the world will know you were a hero, not a traitor. You'll have your name back, Queen. It is a gift of absolute trust, a bridge back to the life I lost. I look at him, the weight of his gaze making my heart do something it hasn't done in years. It flutters. I open my mouth to thank him, to say something I might regret later, but the doors to the private wing don't just open. They are thrown aside. Kang bursts in. His jaw is set, his eyes burning with a triumphant, ugly light. Behind him, 3 other guards stand with their hands on their holsters. Kang doesn't bow. He marches to the marble table and slams a tablet down with enough force to crack the glass. I told you, Chairman, Kang spits, his voice trembling with a mix of fury and vindication. I told you she was a parasite. I told you she was a breach waiting to happen. Seong-jun's face doesn't change, but the air in the room drops 20 degrees. He looks at the screen. I look with him. My blood turns to ice. It's a series of high-resolution thermal and night vision photos. There I am, in the alley behind the gala, meeting with 2 of Director Park's known associates. In my hand is my tactical umbrella, being handed over like a trade. The next slide is worse. A digital ledger showing a $500,000 wire transfer from the Yun Syndicate slush fund to a private account under my mother's maiden name. An account I haven't looked at in years. It's perfect. It's a surgical strike. The ghost umbrella, the one unique weapon that defines me, found at a location I never visited. I look at Seong-jun, expecting to see the man who touched my scars last night. Instead, I find the void. The warmth in his obsidian eyes has been vacuumed out, replaced by a vacant, dead stare that is 1,000 times worse than rage. He looks at me as if I am a bug he's just realized is carrying a plague. Seong-jun, I start, my voice steady despite the hammer in my chest. It's a frame. Look at the metadata. Look at. The elders are already on the secure line, Kang interrupts, his voice a hiss. They saw the breach in the security perimeter. They saw the money move. They want her head, Chairman. They want her hung from the gates of the compound as a warning. Seong-jun doesn't look at Kang. He doesn't look at the tablet. He reaches into his waistband and pulls a customized black pistol. The metallic click of the safety being disengaged is the loudest sound in the world. He steps toward me, the barrel of the gun coming up until it is pressed firmly against the center of my forehead. His hand is a block of stone. No tremor. No hesitation. This is the hand that traced my spine hours ago. I told you the void owns its shadows, Queen, he whispers, his voice a flat, dead rasp that breaks my heart into a million jagged pieces. I didn't realize my shadow was a parasite. I didn't realize I was bringing the viper into the nursery. You know this isn't me, I say, staring directly into his dead eyes. I don't beg. I don't cry. I am a professional. You know how I work. This is too loud, too sloppy. It's just loud enough to work, he counters. He leans in, the cold steel of the barrel biting into my skin. The elders want a death, Queen. They want blood for the betrayal. The silence in the room stretches, thin and agonizing. I wait for the trigger pull. I expect the darkness. But Seong-jun's eyes flicker for a fraction of a second, a shadow of a man who once believed in something. He lowers the gun, but he doesn't put it away. Get out, he says. The words are a sentence of exile. Kang, take her to the service elevator. Strip her of the codes. Take the tech. If I see you in Seoul after sunset, I will finish what the Jangs started. You are dead to the void. You are dead to me. Chairman, we should, Kang starts. Get her out. Seong-jun roars, a sudden, violent burst of emotion that shakes the glass walls. 10 minutes later, I am standing in the service alley behind the fortress. The rain is back, freezing and relentless, turning the world into a gray blur. I am no longer in midnight silk. I am back in my old, damp trench coat. I have no money, no ghost status, and a death warrant on my head. Kang sneers at me before the heavy iron door slams shut, locking me out of the only place that felt like home. I stand in the gutter, the water rushing over my boots. My heart is screaming, but my ghost brain is already moving at terminal velocity. The frame was too perfect. The timing was too surgical. They used the one thing I valued, my name, to destroy the one thing I was starting to want. Him. It was an inside job. Someone within the void wanted me gone because I was getting too close to the holes in the security. I reach into my sleeve and pull out a small, jagged piece of metal, a backup shim I'd hidden in my cuff before they stripped me. I don't run for the airport. I don't hide in the shadows. I am a reaper. And if the void wants a ghost, I'm going to give them a haunting they'll never forget. I'm going to find the traitor, and then I'm going to find my way back to the king. The rain doesn't feel like a burden anymore. It feels like a cloak. I'm crouched on the ledge of the building directly across from the void fortress, my breathing shallow and rhythmic. I'm no longer the woman in the midnight blue gown. I am back in my skin. I wear matte black tactical cargo pants, a reinforced combat vest, and my heavy boots. My tactical umbrella is locked into the magnetic harness on my back, and a secondary combat knife is sheathed at my hip. Through the sniper scope, I watch the penthouse. The holes I warned Seong-gyun about are being exploited one by one. The thermal sensors flicker and die. The biometric locks on the elevator are bypassed with a ghost loop I recognize instantly. Kang's signature. A flash of orange light erupts inside the main foyer. Then, the entire building goes dark. Total blackout. To anyone else, this is a death trap. To a man like Seong-jun, it's a temporary advantage. But to a reaper trained in the special sectors, the dark is home. I don't wait for an invitation. I secure the high-tension cable to the roof's anchor point, aim the launcher, and fire. The line bites into the stone of the penthouse terrace, the same terrace where he told me I was dead to the void. I step off the ledge. The zip line is a silent stomach-churning rush through the freezing wind. I disconnect a split second before impact, rolling across the rain-slicked marble of the terrace and coming up in a low crouch. The glass door I'd flagged for its structural weakness is already shattered. The scent of cordite and copper hits me the moment I cross the threshold. The penthouse is a tomb. The only light comes from the distant, hazy glow of the city below, casting long, skeletal shadows across the foyer. I hear them before I see them, the Jang Syndicate mercenaries. They're shouting, fumbling with flashlights, their boots heavy and clumsy on the stone. They are intruders in a world they don't understand. I move like a wraith. I don't use a gun. Muzzle flashes are just targets in the dark. I unsheathe my umbrella, the weighted handle a familiar extension of my arm. The first mercenary appears from the kitchen, his flashlight beam swinging wildly. I'm beneath his line of sight before the light hits me. I drive the reinforced tip of the umbrella into his throat, then pivot, using his falling body as a shield as his partner turns the corner. I flick the umbrella's release, not to open the canopy, but to fire the high-pressure CO2 canister built into the frame. The blast of freezing air and blunt force hits the second man in the chest, throwing him back against the marble counter with a bone-deep thud. 2 down. 6 to go. I move through the halls, clearing the path to the main office. My movements are silent, lethal, and efficient. I don't feel pity. I don't feel fear. I only feel the cold, calculated rhythm of the hunt. I am the ghost they tried to erase, and I am haunting every shadow they pass. I reach the heavy oak doors of the void office. They're slightly ajar. Inside, the betrayal has reached its climax. Seong-jun is slumped against the floor-to-ceiling window, his hand pressed against a dark, spreading stain on his shoulder. His breathing is labored, his face pale in the moonlight. Behind him, Suri is curled into a ball, her small hands over her ears, her eyes wide with a terror that has no voice. Kang is standing over them. He's discarded the mask of the loyal soldier. He holds a suppressed pistol aimed directly at Seong-jun's head, a jagged, triumphant sneer twisting his features. "You were always too soft, Chairman," Kang gloats, his voice echoing in the silent room. "Bringing in a foreign stray, letting your sister's silence dictate the pace of the syndicate. The Jangs offered me a seat at the table. All I had to do was clear the holes you were so worried about." Kang thumbed the hammer of his gun. "Goodbye, Seong-jun. The void belongs to me now." I don't shout a warning. I don't give him the chance to be a hero. I roll a smoke grenade through the gap in the door. It hisses, unleashing a thick, acrid cloud of gray haze that fills the room in seconds. Kang coughs, his aim wavering as he tries to find his target in the soup. I emerge from the smoke like a nightmare. I don't use the umbrella this time. I use the combat knife. In one fluid motion, I strike the nerve in Kang's wrist, sending his gun clattering across the floor. Before he can scream, I've spun him around, the blade of my knife pressed hard against his carotid artery. "You missed a hole, Kang," I whisper into his ear, my voice a cold promise of death. I shove him away, a roundhouse kick to his temple, sending him crashing into the marble table he used to prove my betrayal. He hits the floor and doesn't move. The smoke begins to clear. Seong-jun looks up, his eyes unfocused, blood matting his hair. He blinks, staring at the tactical shadow standing over him. He looks shocked, half-conscious, and for the first time utterly vulnerable. "I told you," he gasps, his voice a ragged shadow of its former power. "I told you to leave, Soul Queen." I don't look at him. I'm already reloading the CO2 canister in my umbrella, my eyes fixed on the hallway where the sound of more boots is approaching. I stand in front of him and Suri, a singular, unbreakable shield. "I don't take orders from men who can't keep their own house in order," I reply, my voice flat and focused. "You still owe me for the security consultation, Seong-jun. I'm here to collect." I can feel his gaze on my back, a mix of disbelief, agony, and a burgeoning fierce pride. He realizes then that I didn't come back for the money, or the name, or the contract. I came back for him. "Stay down," I command as the first of the remaining mercenaries rounds the corner. The Reaper is working. The roar of the wind on the helipad is a physical wall of sound, a chaotic symphony of the storm that drowns out everything but the frantic thrumming of my own heart. The rain is lashing down in sheets, turning the world into a gray, blurred nightmare. Director Park is backed against the edge of the roof, his expensive tuxedo ruined, his eyes wide with a manic, cornered desperation. He's holding Suri in front of him, his arm locked around her throat, a silver-plated pistol pressed hard against her temple. Behind me, near the terrace doors, Seong-jun is on his knees. He's used his belt as a makeshift tourniquet for his shoulder, his face a ghostly mask of agony. He's reaching out, his fingers clawing at the wet concrete, but he's too weak to bridge the distance. The Void King is reduced to a helpless witness to his own destruction. Stay back. Park screams, his voice cracking as it's whipped away by the gale. I'll do it, Queen. I'll take her over the edge. I'll take the king's heart and leave him with nothing but the cold. He looks at me, his lip curling in a sneer. Look at you, the loyal dog. He aimed a gun at your skull 24 hours ago, and here you are, bleeding for him. You're not a reaper. You're a masochist. I don't answer. I am in the void now, not his, but mine. My ghost training has taken over, a cold, analytical overlay that filters out the noise. I'm calculating the wind shear from the north, the slickness of the helipad, and the exact 3-inch window of exposure between Park's shoulder and Suri's head. I have one shot. One ghost trick involving the spring-loaded mechanism of my umbrella, a high-velocity launch of the weighted carbon fiber ferrule. I've never perfected it. If I'm off by a fraction of a degree, I kill the child myself. You're nothing. Park shrieks, his finger tightening on the trigger. You're a disgraced janitor. A nobody. I see it then. Not in Park's eyes, but in Suri's. She isn't looking at the gun, she's looking at me. She sees the scars I don't hide anymore. She sees the woman who performed card tricks in the dark. She sees a fighter. And then, the miracle happens. Suri doesn't just tremble. She finds a feral, untapped strength buried under years of trauma. She doesn't just scream. She bites. She sinks her teeth into Park's forearm with the desperation of a trapped animal. Queen. The word is a jagged, rusty explosion of sound. It's the first word she's spoken in years, a piercing cry that shatters Park's composure. He howls in pain, his arm jerking back, the barrel of the pistol tilting away from her temple for a heartbeat. That's the only heartbeat the Reaper needs. I don't think. I react. I trigger the release on the handle of my umbrella. The weighted ferrule doesn't just fly. It screams through the air. A matte black harpoon fueled by high-pressure CO2 and a year's worth of resentment. It strikes Park directly in the center of his forehead. The impact is surgical. There is no cinematic explosion, just the dull thud of heavy carbon fiber hitting bone. Park's eyes go vacant instantly. His grip on Suri slackens, his knees buckling. The wind catches him, pulling him backward like a discarded rag. He falls silently, disappearing into the black abyss of the Seoul skyline without a single cry. Suri. I'm moving before Park even clears the ledge. I lung forward, my boots skidding on the wet helipad, and catch the girl by the waist just as she begins to stumble toward the edge. I pull her into my chest, the hard plates of my tactical vest meeting her small, shaking frame. I collapse onto the concrete, shielding her with my body as the rain continues to hammer down. A shadow moves through the peripheral of the rain. Seong-jun has crawled the last 10 feet, his breath coming in ragged, bloody gasps. He reaches out, his good hand trembling as it finds Suri's shoulder. The three of us are huddled there on the roof, a broken, blood-stained triptych of survivors. The silence that follows the gunshot that never went off is the loudest thing I've ever heard. Suri pulls back slightly, her face pale, her eyes searching mine. She's still trembling, the adrenaline of her first word leaving her frail. She looks at me, her voice a tiny, fragile whisper that barely carries over the wind. Safe? I am a woman who was trained to feel nothing. I am a woman who was taught that emotions are just vulnerabilities waiting to be exploited. But as I look at this child, and then at the man beside us, the king who would have died to protect her, the ice in my chest finally shatters. I pull her back into the warmth of my vest and nod, my chin resting on the top of her head. Safe, I murmur. I've got you. Seong-jun looks up at me. He doesn't look at me as a boss looking at an employee. He doesn't look at me as a king looking at a shadow. He looks at me as a man who has been pulled from the mouth of hell by a goddess of war. There is no void in his eyes now, only a fierce, blinding gratitude that tells me the contract we signed is no longer made of ink and paper. It's made of blood. And for the first time in my life, I don't want to run from it. The smell of soul after a summer rain is different from the height of the penthouse. It's cleaner, sharper, a scent of ozone and expensive possibilities. 6 months ago, this fortress was a tomb of glass and steel. Today, it breathes. The lights are no longer dimmed to hide a monster. They are bright enough to illuminate a kingdom. Across the room, Suri sits on a plush rug, her voice a steady, confident stream as she explains the mechanics of a complex card flourish to her tutor. She's no longer the silent ghost of the East Wing. She is my shadow, learning that a woman's voice can be just as tactical as a blade. The piece is interrupted by the low, grating voice of a sub-boss from the Gyeonggi territories. He's a man who smells of cheap ambition and hasn't yet learned that the world shifted while he was hiding in the suburbs. He's standing in the center of the living room, leaning a little too close to me, his eyes dismissive. I understand the syndicate is under new management, he sneers, his gaze flicking toward the bedroom doors. But I'd rather discuss my tribute with the chairman, not his decorative help. Surely, a woman of your background understands that some things are too heavy for a mistress to carry. Seong-jun, sitting in his obsidian chair with a glass of neat whiskey, doesn't move. He doesn't growl. He simply leans back, a dangerous, knowing smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. He's not going to save me. He's going to enjoy the show. I don't raise my voice. I step into the man's personal space, the tip of my new, gold-inlaid tactical umbrella resting precisely on the bridge of his shoe. In 30 seconds, I say, my voice a calm, lethal velvet, I can dismantle your entire logistics network, leak your offshore accounts to the tax authorities, and show you exactly why janitors are the most dangerous people in the building. They know where all the trash is hidden. I give the umbrella a subtle twist, and the faint click of the concealed blade mechanism makes his face turn the color of ash. I am the security chief of this city. You will address me as such, or you will leave through the window. He doesn't wait for a third option. He stammers a frantic apology and flees, his boots scrambling on the marble. Seong-jun sets his glass down and stands, closing the distance between us in 3 long predatory strides. He pulls me into his space, his hands finding the small of my back, the place where the scars used to be my only identity. You're getting terrifying, Queen, he murmurs, his eyes dark with a heat that has nothing to do with business. He doesn't pull out a velvet box. He reaches into his pocket and produces a heavy, solid platinum band. It's not a delicate ring. It's a seal. The Yun Syndicate's void emblem is fused perfectly with a stylized ghost orchid, my emblem. You saved my heart, Queen, he says, sliding the ring onto my finger. It's heavy, permanent, and possessive. Now, help me rule the dark. Not as my shadow, but as my equal. I look at the ring, then up at the man who saw me in the rain and decided I was worth the storm. I used to secure the secrets of men who didn't deserve them. Now, I am the secret, and the void has never looked so bright.
My dear fierce hearts and midnight dreamers, as the final echoes of Queen and Seung-gun's story fade into the Seoul skyline, I wanted to step out from behind the curtain for a moment. This story marks the end of an incredible January 2026, and looking back at the numbers, I am absolutely blown away by you. We've reached hundreds of thousands of views this month, and that isn't just a statistic to me. It represents every minute you spent immersed in these worlds I build for you. I want to say a massive thank you for the power of your presence. Thank you for the incredible watch time. Seeing you stay until the very last word of these long-form stories tells me you truly value the craft of storytelling. the engagement. To every person who hit the like button, you are the reason these stories find new ears. To everyone who commented, sharing your theories and your favorite badass moments, reading your thoughts is the highlight of my day. Growing the Syndicate. A special thank you to those who shared our stories with your friends, family, and associates. Because of your recommendations, our dark romance family has grown by thousands of new subscribers this month alone. Your loyalty. Whether you've been here since the first video or joined us during today's premiere, thank you for choosing this channel as your escape. We are just getting started. February is around the corner, and I have even darker secrets, higher stakes, and more legendary romances waiting in the shadows. Until the next story begins, keep your hearts fierce, your minds sharp, and your lights dimmed. I'll see you in the next one.
Listening from UK, thank you for sharing your amazing story.